Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Mark is on the train. Grant is coming back from the Masters. And I think in my contract, I am obligated to always have at least one person from the state of Iowa who's really smart on the show. So I have my good friend, Adam Fellers. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It was good to see you this last weekend. P&L was a fun experience, and your son wrestled well. The Seabolt Wrestling Academy wrestled well. Apparently, you guys have a lot of fans, a lot of moms and dads that are Iowa women's basketball fans, because Friday night the hotel bar was packed. Those guys do a great job, don't they?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to see. I mean, you can really see the Caitlin Clark effect in full bore. I mean, you even had Mac Ryder and Jared Lawrence even rooting for Iowa, which is unheard of.
Yeah,
but it was a great experience. Really fortunate to be part of P&L. Just try to get the top kids, top competition, and in an environment that's lucrative for that. So, really good event. I thought Zach and his team did a great job, and overall, it was a great event.
Yeah, they got it done quickly. It was interesting because I booked a hotel in Kansas City on Sunday thinking it was like a normal tournament and would run till 6 or 7. And I got to Kansas City at 6 o'clock and already had a reservation. So I just called a buddy and grabbed dinner and had a relaxing Monday. But I'm driving home while everybody in the world's looking at the eclipse. But great job by those guys. I thought it was interesting. They actually made a point of saying the word, "We want a non-hostile environment." And Randy Couture tries to do that at my events. And it's interesting how just saying that out loud, I think, reduces maybe some of the anxiety or stress. I don't know. But I didn't see one fight. I got to sit mat side for semis and finals. And even when people were presenting bricks, there was not anger. It was like, hey, I'm challenging this, but it was that tone of voice and everything else. Did you kind of see it the same way?
100%. I mean, if you think about performance anxiety, which in sports psychology and all these terms that are being used a lot today, and ailed, and some of it I think is, I'm not saying witchcraft, but a lot of that is produced by the environment in which you're competing in. So all the added stressors of coaches, parents screaming, it doesn't ever allow the kids to fully compete. And I think you see kids compete a lot more freely, probably in freestyle and Greco anyways.
Yes.
Just because for whatever reason, people don't put as much focus on that versus like a folk style state tournament.
Yeah.
But it was really good. I mean, you didn't see very many boring matches, that's for sure.
People let it fly. That was for sure. I did interviews for them and walked around and talked to 8 or 9 of the coaches, including TJ, and they all talked about the strategic timing of the event, that it was 3 weeks before Vegas.
Yep.
Hey, we came here to get better. We also came here to figure out what each of us individually and collectively what we need to improve at. We need to know what we're already good at so we can coach to those scenarios. And, you just said something which I subconsciously hadn't even thought of. I didn't hear one crazy parent like screaming at the top of their lungs. And, usually there's one of those in every tournament that just like you feel bad for that kid. Like he wants to go hide underneath the bleachers just because that's their mom or dad. So I just thought it was really well done.
And there was a lot of college coaches in attendance. So it's not like there was no spectators there, like of college coaches, no different than Fargo or anywhere else. The biggest thing I think I like about the timing of the event, and I think overall the sport of wrestling has a lot of area to improve on, both from a coaching and athlete standpoint, is a lot of times you wrestle a tournament or wrestle matches and then you either win or you lose, but there's really not any athlete assessment of after that match. Okay, what did I do really good at? What did I need to improve on? Self-reflection, and even as a club. So then when you go back to practice, you really get caught back in this hamster wheel, and you're focused on the winning and losing part. Even if you did a lot of bad things, but you still won, there's no assessment part. And that's the thing we've continued to try to do, is collectively and more individually, like a lot of times coaches are like, well, here's what you did wrong, or here's all the things you improve on. putting that back on the kids for them to really have to go back in their mind and go through the match. And when they assess themselves and they're coming to the answer with the answers that you want to hear, you're making strides because then you can address it in practice.
It's interesting you say that. I coached 2 little kids for a couple of years, and one of the things I learned was I told them every time they got done to write down 3 things they thought they did well and 3 things they thought they could do better. And I just kind of made it up because they were coming to practice once a week. And I mean, I could be teaching them stuff, but if it wasn't part of their sequence or growth, what amazed me was of the 6 things they wrote down, they were wrong about 5 of them.
Yeah.
You know, like a kid will be like, well, I was really good at takedowns and he lost every match, but he got 1 takedown against the worst kid. Or kid will be like, I stink on bottom, and he made the finals, and the only kid he lost to was, you know, the only kid he got rode by was like 30 seconds by the guy in the finals. But it also literally made me realize that when you're in it, it's hard to see things accurately. And, you know, it's like I got a chance to, I don't know what meal we had, but we grabbed some wings and talked after the first day. I guess it was an early dinner, and got to talk to you about my event. And like, you know, what do you see? How can things go better? What, not looking for praise, but what do you think is good? You know, like you mentioned, hey, the uniforms from Nike are awesome, you know, and that's great for us, you know, and it's great for Nike. They're like, hey, maybe, I think you said, hey, when they're in the tunnel, keep them there longer. Let the music start playing. Have them walk out instead of run out. I'm like, man, that's right. You know, but you have to be open to criticism. But also for me, that event was 3 weeks later, and I'm 50 something years old. Like I'm ready to take it as, and I know you're not trying to just jump on my back. You're being my friend, you know. So
yeah,
all those things factor into it, right?
Well, I think it's natural human behavior, habit. Going back to the kids part of it, a lot of times the kids will tell you, especially if they lose, they'll tell you all the things that they didn't do good at, right? All the things they did bad. And in that, the word confidence, right? They continue. They did some good things in there. So then what happens is the kids start focusing on what they're not good at and they avoid it versus knowing what they're good at, right? It's so easy, cycle behavior of what you didn't do versus what you did do. So try to end that on a positive note. But same thing on the event. You go to an event, have a great event, and have one little slip up somewhere,
right?
And people take shots at it just because that's kind of natural human behavior of, for whatever reason, focus on the negative versus like not even the event part of it. Having kids the opportunity just to compete against those level kids,
yeah,
right before the NCAA tournament, and you go on and on and on. I hate to use the Penn State terminology, but they should be thankful and have a level of gratitude just for the opportunity.
Yeah, like to go back to P&L, and then we'll go to some other stuff. Like Dean Anderson, JJ McComas was a semifinal. Okay, and we just had Dean Anderson against Tommy Ferret in Brawl, and JJ's been in Brawl, and you kind of have to live under a rock if you work with Oklahoma and not know who JJ McComas is. And us with Hall of Fame duels, you know, I know him and his family, his mom well. And I literally walked over to Wilcox and said, if that's a semi, you guys did good. Like
100%.
That's a final, that's a main event marquee matchup, the main event match at 60% of the tournaments in the country, probably higher. Okay. Yeah. And if that's your semi, and he just, you know, and you know, Zach, he's a very humble guy, but just, you know, he's running around 100 miles. He probably got 18,000 steps in that weekend, you know, but he was very, you know, he had a quick smile. I was like, thanks, man. I didn't think of it that way. It's like, you know, you just keep it moving. But yeah, really well done. They got done both days in 6 hours. We have a lot of club coaches that watch these podcasts. I'd strongly suggest you guys contact B&L. I know there's a buy-in fee. I'm not going to put all the numbers out there, but you know, you guys can have those conversations. But really well done. They treated the coaches great. There was a social. They made sure the people had contacts with the right hotels. Tons of mats.
Venue was great.
The referees were really high level. There were a ton of referees. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to go was I wanted to get reps in doing freestyle and Greco because next week's the Olympic trials. And, you know, some of the referees are the same thing. Like, hey, we're doing the Olympic trials. So,
yeah,
high level stuff all the way around. All right, let's talk about Last Chance. Biggest surprise for you?
Biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise.
Probably let's try to say this. Probably the some of the athletes, you can just tell. None of the high school performances really surprised me, honestly, just because I've been around it so much. And you're seeing that more and more. Like, there's not. We talked about this last week, and there's not that huge gap anymore where like kids get out of high school, there's a huge development to them to college.
Right.
So these guys compete. The biggest surprise for me was probably some of the guys that are still quote unquote in RT season competing. Just you can just see there's their lack of fire and want to be there. Probably some guys that have, or a lot of guys that have let the candle burn too long. I mean, just like some of these guys, not being negative, but you see say like, why are you still, like, almost a reality check? Like, why are we still doing this?
Right.
You know what I mean? The young kids didn't surprise me at all. I mean, I'm interested to see, like, you always hear this burnout concept or competing too much concept, right? You hear that it's become regular rhetoric in the wrestling community about match count. So I'd like to see, like, in 5 years how Jax Forrest and Bo Bassett's match count looks, because they compete all the time, and they're not doing pitch counts on too many matches, and I think they're holding up just fine. And you can see when those guys step on the mat, those two, Aiden Sinclair,
Valencia,
Knox, Valencia, Marisola, and on and on and on. They love it. They're not scared of it. They're not like worried about it. They're having fun with it, and they stood in there toe to toe. I mean, Bassett to be the national champion in Anthony Ashnault, and then Jax to beat Tomasell the way he did. Jax is a wild card in that bracket. I'm telling you right now, he's a different feel.
No, I was talking to Cornell Robinson about that last night, who coaches Luke Lillidow, who I worked with Cornell back when we were St. Louis and was his college coach. To go back to the first part, the biggest surprises for me, Jaron Smith winning 125 surprised me. You know, like, I just think you and me are pretty smart guys. And if we had gone through and just said, okay, we're going to pick, like a snake draft or whatever, it would have been a long time before one of us picked Jaron Smith.
I agree.
Christian Carroll winning 97, was seeded 4, but he looks different. He looks like a different human being. I know, they redshirted him last year, but, they have an interesting situation there because they still have Serber. They also have Cody Merrill coming in. They still have Doucette, but he looks like.
The rumor is they're in the hunt for Erickson too, or Hendrickson. Sorry.
Yeah, The rumor is a lot of teams are in the hunt for him, but for sure. But I mean, I think either way, like, I think he didn't beat Doucette last year, so even if it's just a Doucette issue, if he wants to get into the lineup, I don't know how he does with Serber. I know Serber was hurt last year. He just looks like he could be a difference maker. It was interesting because when we got out of P&L, the semis were done, but the finals hadn't started. So I pulled it up. Marcus had a tablet. Shout out Marcus Hain. And I'm holding the tablet while he's driving. But we had read the highlight that Bo had teched Ashnault, and we'd had Kolosnik in Border Brawl before, and he just kind of grabbed me, and I'm like, that dude's a different level of strong, and you can kind of tell watching him because he's not super athletic. He's not super flexible. He's not super explosive. He's kind of to quote Jim Gibbons, he's an on-the-tracks guy, but, post-high crotch stuff straight into you, but gets to you hard, like hits you hard. And I said, I don't know what happened in the Ashnault match, but I think Colo's just too strong for Bo. Because I said, Bo wrestles the same way, and Colo's just stronger at it. And that was exactly what happened, And Jax is great for us because we just had Jax in Border Brawl. He wrestled Larkin, which was a really well-viewed match in terms of numbers. And Larkin and Anderson put out a video which already had 17,000 views. And besides these podcasts, probably in my whole life, nobody will view anything I do 17,000 times. So that was pretty awesome. But it's interesting. I agree with you, but I'm totally biased that, like, Jax and even Luke, if you haven't felt them before, they just wrestle different. And to add on to one of you said, the young kids, I think one of the reasons they enjoy it and wrestle free is because they're not supposed to win. I mean, subconsciously, they know they're not supposed to win. Like, I'm not going to put a name on anybody, but if you're 29, 30 years old, you're hanging on to an RTC because, frankly, you just don't want to go start real life. And even if you win this tournament, you're going to go be the 14 seed at a tournament 10 times harder, And even if you somehow run that gauntlet, you have a 2 out of 3 against a world champion or medalist, the level of enthusiasm, if you have any sense of realism in your life, the level of enthusiasm is tough because you're like, well, if I don't do this, I probably got to leave my shoes on the mat. You know what I mean? Like all those high school names you said and others are not leaving their shoes on the mat no matter what, you know, like, and I texted Howard and congratulated him. But if Jax had lost, I mean, Bo Bassett was like, it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I can't wait to go to Vegas in 3 weeks. And I'm sure he was disappointed. I'm sure Bill was disappointed, and they're supposed to be disappointed. But I just think it's a different level at that stage of your life. Like the whole world's in front of you versus a lot of the wrestling world's behind you, right?
Yeah, and the Bassett family, they're bulletproof. I mean, Bo's been given a level of public exposure that's been probably second to none.
Yeah,
and with that comes a lot of haters or people trashing and waiting for opportunities to fail every time. And the amount of head-on approach that Bo's had, he's never ducking competition. He's wrestling everywhere. He takes his lumps. I mean, and he keeps going. That's hard to find in this day and age. And you saying about they weren't supposed to win, that's really true. And I said this publicly, and so I'll say it again. I'm interested to see. I don't know if Bo Bartlett's qualified for the trials. I don't think he is, but
he has.
He is.
Well, Bo Bartlett placed at the U.S. Senior Nationals in December.
Okay, that's right. So that's a great example of somebody that's picked to win or supposed to win in folk style and how tight he wrestles. And then you watch him last year at the U.S. Open, and you know, he went through the bracket and got his hand raised even against Nick Lee, and then they ended up switching, but just completely trashed. Like when you're the guy that's supposed to win, how you wrestle tight, and when you're not supposed to win, it's just a switch. And so many people think that they're worried about everybody else thinks, and the reality of it is that's something that a figment of your imagination, because it's really not that big a deal.
I think the second part's 100% true. I don't know. I think 16,000 people booing Dayton Fix was real. You know, I don't think it was a figment of his imagination, but I also think none of those people could live with the discipline 1 week of their life that Dayton does, 52 weeks of the year. So, but
discipline in what? Like he got to somewhere, he's got to something, he's got a world medal, he's a junior world champ, he's a 4-time runner-up. You can say whatever you want about the downfalls, but I go the other side of just the consistency of performing at that high level for that long is rare.
I think he was undefeated in duels for Oklahoma State, and people know I had Dayton on the show. Dayton wrestled in the second border brawl, and those are the kids that add credibility. Like when we say, hey, we had Aaron Brooks wrestle in this event. We had Dayton Fix wrestle in this event. Like now kids want to be a part of it, it does add credibility. I think the Bo Bassett. Yeah, right. Well, the other thing too is nobody can big time you, right? Like if somebody goes, well, I'm too good to wrestle in your event, right? Well, those guys weren't, They're
not the guys who win anyways. Who do you think out of the last chance qualifier winners, who do you think has, the biggest or the best chance to maybe not win it, but go deep in the bracket?
I think Jax, for the reason you said, it's the most wide open weight, right? Like it's all sort of draw dependent because he will move a spot depending on whether Figs wrestles or not. And people don't, you and I are, and I'm going to say this as a compliment, you and I are wrestling nerds. Okay. Like we know, hey, there's a big difference if whether you're the 5 seed or the 6 seed versus a very small difference if you're the 5 seed or the 4 seed, right? Because 4 hits 5 in the semis, 6 are on the bottom side of the bracket. Like we did a very in-depth thing on where we thought they should have seeded. We thought they should have made Starachi the 6 seed because you can't put him in the top half with the 1. You have to put him with the 3, not the 2, and you have him meet the 3 as late as possible. Yeah. And it's okay. So at least people can disagree, but at least that makes sense, right? Yep. So, I mean, Colo has lost almost all those top guys, so I just don't know about him. Chenzo, sort of same thing, right? And he's going to probably draw some version of Keegan, David, Nolf, somebody super tough, like, in the round of 16. I mean, McFadden, I'm sorry.
McFadden looked really good coming off of the injury. He got emotional in his interview, which is, it's always great to see those stories.
It's awesome. But he's also really a 79. Like he's just not a full size 86. And that's the problem with this weight. Like, it's hard to explain to people that are sort of, I don't want to, like, not deep into it fans, like, hey, it's like Jaden came down and Dave came up that one year and wrestled each other. You know, it's like Adam's coming down and David's coming up, and they would never, me would never wrestle, but
yep,
we're going to wrestle, and it's going to be the most important meet of our lives, you know, like,
yep.
you know, so, I mean, I would say Jack's just for that reason. I mean, 97 is not very deep. I mean, you know, besides Kyle and Jaden, if he wrestles, I mean, Mike Mock's really good. Colin Moore's won a lot. I mean, I could see Chris. The other thing is this. If you said where are they going to place, that's a totally different bet, because you're going to see a truckload of forfeits on the backside, right? Like, you know, a lot of people are going to, you know, so like maybe you're 10 points better than me on the front, but we hit on the back and you just don't care anymore. And, you know, so you don't wrestle, or you don't wrestle like the best version of Adam Fellers, and I sneak one.
Yeah.
The younger guys are going to work really hard because top three are still members of the USA Wrestling national team, and you get traveling stipends, traveling privileges, extra coaching. I think you'll see the young kids wrestle super hard for those opportunities, where, again, like a 29 or 30-year-old, like we talked about, like, I already done that. I'm not doing the cycle anyway, so what's the difference, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing is going to be like not having 57 and 65 qualified yet for Olympics is also like subconsciously or consciously that's going to affect people coming into the tournament. Like, if you know you're getting ready for one tournament to get a shot to be the guy to go to Paris, like, there's a level of finality to that, somewhat, right? You've qualified the weight, or if it's already qualified, it's only a qualifier. But if you win 57 or 65, great job. Now you have the opportunity now to go to qualify the weight. So that has to be something psychologically, just in preparation, and even peaking or periodization, whatever you want to call it, is like you got to come 2.5 weeks later, 3 weeks later, then go qualify the weight.
Right. Well, our family's friends with Jordan Oliver, and we saw him in 21 when he looked amazing, you know, qualifying the weight, or not qualifying, I'm sorry, winning the, you know, getting his spot. Yeah, winning the trials. And then I thought he wrestled really well. He lost to Musa Kayev, and back then it was only the top two. And for people that don't know, they've changed that. They took the 6th place out at Worlds and replaced it with the 3rd place at the final last chance qualifier. So you have some margin of error. You know, if you and I are on the same side of the bracket and you're the best guy, I still got a chance, where back then you just didn't. And I think that probably prevented some political manipulation too, because, like, if somebody doesn't like me, they can just Jimmy rig it where you and I are on the same side, and then I'm done. Yeah. You know, this way I can run through the bracket on the back. 100%. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think those things are interesting. Some other things that are tied to the international wrestling side of things. Sajalayev was not allowed to compete in the qualifier, just so people understand this. And Grant will deep dive into this next week. We're just kind of putting it out there so people know we're not sleeping on it. Russia qualified the weight. Russia can do whatever they want in terms of who they send, you know, but the weight's qualified. He has visa things that have to do with his alignment with certain things to do with the war. Chamizo lost in the semis to the host country athlete and was none too happy about it. I will tell you this. I saw it. I don't think it was the right call. I also think freestyle is I love freestyle. It's a beautiful sport. It also there's so much subjectivity. I will tell you this, because it is absolutely pertinent to you, Adam Fellers. A referee is a friend of mine, sent me a video, and he said, how would you score this? It was Nolan Fellers wrestling, okay, at P&L. And it was where a guy tried to gut him, and he caught the leg, and the guy's almost out of bounds. And then the guy tries to gut him again, and he catches the leg again, but the guy didn't necessarily get to defendable position. So I just called him. I said, what are the options? He goes, you can go 2, you or blue. Okay, just so people can understand. It was 2 blue. It can be 2 blue, 2 blue, or it can be 2 blue, 2. It can just be 1 blue, caution, and 2 for fleeing, because when he tried to gut him, got him back,
and he didn't place, yes.
But so I said, walk me through, because I was on the commentary, and he goes, Cherry Pack said this. You just said that this corner is probably going to throw a brick. I'm like, well, good. I didn't at least say anything real dumb. Like I get a B plus. I don't get an A because I didn't have any courage. But what he said to me was, it can't be 2-2 unless you think the gut-wrenching athlete got to a defendable position. Okay. And he goes, and it can only be 2, caution 2, if you think the guy bridged himself out. He goes, I just gave 2 because the gut-wrenching athlete never broke his lock. And even though it was a pretty hopeless scenario, he stayed in the lock.
That's good.
I thought it was a great explanation, right? Very concise. Also walked me through each of the other options and why it would be right or wrong. So shout out Scott Cutbirth, because those guys helped me learn. And you just want to be on the mic smarter than the person watching at home, right?
Yeah.
And guys like you 3 years ago were very complimentary, like, hey, man, you're doing a good job, walking through these brick scenarios. And when you're up there 2 days alone, it's, by the way, feel free to be complimentary again. It's a long 2 days, but that's such an example of where it can go so many different ways, right, Adam?
Subjectivity is always tough, and that's how, we talked about folk style a little bit, but that's why the takedown of reaction time, not having it black and white, is hard for the athletes and coaches, but just as much hard for the spectators because your opinion of your subjectivity or opinion on what control is for a takedown may be different than mine. And anytime you're having that game of interpretation versus black and white, it becomes tough. Going back to the Chamizo thing, I see on the front page of ESPN, though, he said he was offered right after weigh-ins $300,000 from Azerbaijan to lose on purpose for bribe. So again, wrestling's in the news, but for all the wrong reasons. It's on the front page of ESPN right now.
I saw that, and I hadn't seen it on ESPN, so I wasn't going to bring it up because it was where I saw it was just like Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. I believe him. Like, I don't think he's the kind of guy that would just say that for no reason. That's an awfully bold thing. The problem too, though, is it's not like somebody wrote it down and gave you a note and signed it, so you can't really prove the offer. So it gets into a lot of he said, and about very high level, less than completely honest things to call it bluntly.
Yeah.
A couple other things in the college world. Jacob Cardenas goes to Michigan, fills a hole there. I know there are some other schools that could have really used him, but people that don't understand this, Ivy League kids can only use undergraduate eligibility for sports. So Cardenas, no bad blood at Cornell. I think that's one of the things. That's the only thing I really want to clarify here is that it's not like he didn't want to wrestle at Cornell another year. He's not allowed to.
How did Yanni and Vito have? I mean, did they just unenroll?
They unenrolled everybody that COVID year. That's how.
So how does that happen? Then how's your eligibility? I don't know. I'm just asking. How's your eligibility? Just once your eligibility starts, it usually doesn't stop. So how does it? How can you just pause your eligibility then?
I think because literally it was a pandemic and they made an exception.
Okay.
I think that's because Josh Saunders is up there. So I talked to Nolan and I actually talked to Mike Gray because we're like, are these kids going to get hosed? And no. And to go back to the Cardenas thing, it's the same thing Lenny Wollick's doing where he's going from Columbia to VTech. So we want people to understand that. There are some things where somebody's unhappy and they go in the portal and we try to report that accurately, or at least that's the possibility. These kids that are leaving as graduates from Ivy League programs are, if they want to wrestle, they're being forced to leave. And this is another version of the 29-year-old that doesn't seem enthusiastic. I'm always amazed by old guys that were never good at anything athletic telling athletes how they should perform or think or look. It's kind of like somebody saying how many dollars Michael Jordan should bet on the golf course. Well, if you had sold $6 million in shoes today, we might be playing more than $10 skins and it wouldn't bother you. It's all perspective and context. So he goes. Speaking of Ivy League, UPenn announces that Matt Valenti is the coach in waiting. He will take over for Roger Reyna.
I'm a little surprised. I'm surprised and not surprised, I guess.
Why either way?
Well, I think sometimes a lot of these schools, and I'm not just personal opinion, I think sometimes the ties to having to be alumni sometimes is probably too high on the priority list. I'm not saying Matt won't be a great coach.
And
And if you look from a productivity standpoint, I think Penn's had one All-American the last like 6, 7, 8 years. Closet or the 41-pounder. Yeah, I think so. Maybe, and they've got that. Not to segue too much, but they've got that. They've got a pretty big RTC that's pretty well funded there with, Burroughs and Berger and Joey McKenna and stuff like that. So I think that's an opportunity for a program that has look on paper, at least from outside in, has pretty good resources. They got Mark Hall and staff. It looks like that should be a program to make a jump. It looks like Matt's been involved at all levels of the infrastructure of the program, so he'll know all the all the levers to pull as a coach. And I wish him nothing but the luck. But I definitely think it's a huge opportunity for upgrade in performance.
For sure. I'm Roger Rain so old he had me in on a recruiting trip in 1988. So just so people know. And so, I have a little bit of bias towards that. They were, he was very kind to me and my family. And I guess that's also a humble brag way of saying I wasn't a terrible student. If you Penn recruits you, you must have been pretty good at school. And you mentioned the guys there, McFadden's another guy that's there that we just talked about from the last chance. So they have a ton of great workout partners. They have Brandon Slay leading that crew. So they have credentials coming out the yin yang. Obviously one of the prohibiting factors is Ivy League recruiting standards. So I guess the upside to that is if you're a guy who can get in there, you're probably going to get more attention because it's not like, say, Oklahoma State or Iowa where there's 4 or 5 deep, and you kind of got to get like a Zach Glazer scenario, and really respect him, like him waiting his time and just working and getting better. And even though he didn't have the tournament he won, it had a pretty amazing regular season, kind of low key. Nobody talked about it. When your only matches or losses are to Brooks, you're doing something right, and held 100%. Him to a decision. So other thing to mention, and we're not going to go through it, but NHSCAs were this weekend along with P&L. That leads to the final high school rankings that are out on the major sources with Flo and Willie. So there's never really like a stopping point in wrestling, but this is sort of the line in the sand. These are the final rankings. The class of 24 kids will pop out of the next rankings, and you'll see new names because if there's a weight where, say, 25 guys are in it and me and Adam are 2 of them and we're seniors, then, 11, if there's 11 guys, there's going to be 14 new kids that have to move up. So you'll see 14 new names, and maybe if there's like a Nolan Fellers that's ranked, he's going to move up just through osmosis process.
Don't you think, and I love the rankings part of it, I think it's also like the crux of performance anxiety or pressure or avoiding competition.
Yeah.
In high school, I think it's such a driver as whatever numbers next to your name.
Well, I think there's 2 things. One, I think the parents make it worse than the kids do. Like, I think if parents said rankings don't matter, just wrestle, then I think the kids wouldn't be that way. The second thing is it absolutely drives me nuts for dealing with border brawl because, like, I had a year kid goes, well, I'll wrestle, but I only want to wrestle somebody ranked higher than me. And I said, do you understand that if every athlete thought that way, we wouldn't have a meet?
Yeah.
He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, the number 1 guys wouldn't wrestle because they got nobody to wrestle. The number 2 guys wouldn't wrestle because the number 1 guys won't wrestle them. I literally had to explain it down to 6 before the kid understood.
Well, it's just that mentality of protecting something.
Right.
It's not real.
And the other thing is this, I said to him, I'm like, look, you are ranked X right now because guys above you agreed to wrestle you.
Yeah.
Like, if you're the number 2 podcaster in America and I'm the number 7 and you agree to do one with me, on paper, it only hurts you. This is a collective thing. You and I have been friends,
that's like that's like that. There's only so much to have, and me sharing anything hurts me, which isn't true.
In my business, they call it the scarcity versus abundance mentality, and I like those words because it's sort of a big picture. Like, look, if I work with Adam today, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get smarter. Hopefully, if Adam works with me, at the very least, he had a good time. Gets to be on our airwaves, and hopefully, he learned something or. Yeah. And if you look at it that way, instead of, well, Adam might outshine me today on my own podcast. Well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's cool. Like maybe somebody goes, man, that was awesome that you trusted him, that he trusted you. You could see the friendship coming through in the conversations. Like you texted me a couple years ago and said, it's cool what good friends you and O are. And people don't know, like people in Iowa call Mark Ostrander. Yeah. And I was like, really? And you said, it's awesome. Like, you can tell you guys are really buddies. You give each other trouble, but in the best possible way. I'm like, thank you, man. Because you don't know what people are watching. Like, you know what you're trying to do, but you don't know how people see it.
For perspective it's interesting though. Like, if you look at success, let's bring this back to wrestling, is you look at the programs that are thriving or on the rise or successful. It's not people that are so blocked off that they think everybody's trying to take stuff from them. They're welcome, and they're I call them they're learners. They're trying to learn from everything that they can. Not saying they're going to incorporate everything and turn 360 or 180 from what they're doing. They're just trying to take bits and pieces from this and that and then incorporate it into their product. And those are the people that continue to grow and flourish versus the people think everybody's against them and blocking stuff out and paranoia. I mean, growth has to be something that you welcome, not reject.
Yeah, and you said it great when you said, like, you're not going to necessarily incorporate everything. Like, I used to be, I have a lot of former athletes, they'll call you and ask for advice. And then I used to be really, maybe hurt's the wrong word, but upset, bothered if they didn't do what I told them. And then my mom said to me one day, she said, David, that guy probably called 5 people. And it doesn't mean he didn't think about your perspective. It was just maybe somebody else's perspective made more sense to him. Maybe he was already leaning that way anyway.
At least he called, though, to your perspective. That should be at least.
That's what she said. She goes, the fact that you made the call list, she goes, if you're going to be bothered if people don't take your advice, stop giving them advice.
100%.
Oh, my mom's really good at getting to the point and with a big, bright smile on her face, and she's borderline brilliant. So, but it changed things for me, like how I looked at it. Like, I felt honored to be consulted rather than bothered if my consultation wasn't applied.
100%.
And like, for example, you coach with Seabolt's club, and you got, I know at least 3 people that coach there, TJ, McClintock, and yourself. Okay. So, like, let's say Nolan, and I'm guessing you're like a lot of dads where you let the other guys coach him, Okay, but let's pick a different kid, just Joe Blow. Okay. And Joe Blow's having trouble finishing a single leg and, head inside shelf. Okay. And there's, you show A, TJ shows B, Justin shows C. Okay. I'm sure they're all A, good techniques, and B, being shown correctly. But that kid's body type, his mind, he's going to naturally drift towards one of those 3. And if your goal as a staff is to get that kid better, no one should care who's he picked. I can't even remember who I said was A, B, or C now, but like whether or not they use the Seabold method or the Fellers method or the McClintock method.
You never tried. Well, that's where ego comes in play in all aspects, right? Like,
right.
Wanting to be right for yourself or validation versus wanting what's best for the kid. Now, I'll also say that most times kids or human beings will always go what they deem as the easiest or path of least resistance to finish. So all while, like, let's say like Drake Isla, for example, he gets to single leg a lot of times, it costs him, we'll try to limp arm out because it's happened so easy, but it's probably the easiest finish pathway that's worked for him in the past. So he goes that way. So a lot of times we'll let them go down that path, but make sure that they're also able to, when they get in those situations that doesn't happen, they're able to at least pull from a skill set and be taught it. It just comes through choices and repetition. But I think not having an ego imprint on kids wrestling is huge. That's why I hate saying coaches go, that's my guy, or I coached him, or I coached him to a national title, or I coached. No, you didn't. You provide opportunities there around in your surroundings, but the kid did it.
Yeah.
The kids.
You did it, right? Like if you won state, you won state, right? And then it's up to that athlete to say, hey, thanks, mom. Thanks, dad. Thanks, coach.
It takes an army to win at anything. Anybody thinks to do anything themselves, they're insane.
Right. Thanks, training partners, et cetera. Yeah. Sure. So, but you're right. And I'm always amazed by the coaches that are like, well, I coach, like I'm older than you. I'm pretty sure it's like I coached Adam to this. And I'm like, what about all the guys that stunk? Are you going to put that in your post too? Right. Like, because they're all on your team. They're all in your club. They're all whatever. Right.
That's where indirectly the culture of, it's not so much said, but it's like parents only, this is a piece of advice. Parents only post when their kids win, right, on social media, or coaches giving shout outs to kids that place or win high. You're not coming out and saying it, so you can't but you're displaying to the kids that it is about winning and losing. So when you preach process on the other side, it's kind of counterproductive for them.
Yeah, your mouth's saying one thing and your thumbs are saying another. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I've literally coached certain kids and I tell their parents, I'm like, stop posting.
Oh my God.
Just stop posting, because you're like, and I said it more directly. I'm like, you only post when he wins. And then when he loses. So like, for example, there was a kid who took second at state last year and didn't place this year. And he wasn't supposed to take second the year he did. And he was definitely supposed to place the year he didn't. Okay. And the mom goes out there and posts how hard the bracket was this year. And I called her and I said, we're friends, right? She said, yeah. I said, take the post down. I said, what you're implying is that the bracket the year that he took second wasn't that tough. She goes, oh, it was tough too. I said, well, of course you're going to say that, you're his mom. But then the only difference is if he placed second in a tough bracket and then didn't place in a tough bracket, he just didn't wrestle well. I said, that's okay. That's life.
Failure's good.
Yes, failure's good.
Like the biggest thing you hear from our club, PJI McClintock, is all levels of kids. We chase losses,
right?
Because if you're not, then you're not creating a reality for these kids. Like if you only go places you're going to win, or the oldest or the biggest or whatever. We chase losses, and I think that's how people grow.
Yeah,
let's talk about let's talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament. I know you probably had a show about it, but what are your biggest takeaways from it?
Well, I think we completely underestimate Cale Sanderson. I think we're not talking. I think we're just talking. Okay, for example, any of us that play these contests and pick these things, right? One of the criteria is who's going to win the team race, right? And you could have just fallen off a turnip truck, or you could be the smartest person in wrestling and everyone's picking Penn State. And for Penn State to just be champion next topic for most of the years. And right now, nobody even knows who's going to be back for them and which weight, and nobody's picking against them. I had a wing bet all year that 3.5 guys from Penn State would win the tournament. After the math was over, if you took the 3 best guys, 3.5 best guys, I was wrong. It was 3. The 3 best guys beat Cornell. They outscored them, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, I've always preached this.
No, but I'm just saying, normally if you can get 5-6 guys like that, because it's the difference between a dual meet and a
100%
tournament. If you coach 5 guys that win nationals and 5 guys that absolutely stink, I'll beat you in a duel, because I just need one guy to not get pinned. We'll pin your stinky guys and we'll win. And we saw it in high school with Sem had some guys out and had some tough battles at the Hall of Fame duels, and then whitewashed everybody at national preps, dominated Ironman, one beast. So
you can have one slip up, but okay, if you have an upset, that's great, but you're probably going to get beat the next round, and the guy that got upset, he's got a chance to come back. So it's when it comes down to one event versus multiple, there's a thing. But for them to put 6 in the finals again is it's, I mean, in my opinion, it's
insane, right?
Well, it's not. People want to. Here's the thing I hate. I'm disappointed in wrestling. And look, I'm an Iowa blue blood, right?
Yeah.
The easy thing to fall back on, or excuse to make, or we've seen some things even with Tom Ryan this week. I think he's just on FRL talking about whatever, but is the more you look externally to why they're winning and trying to justify why you're not winning, the further from the goal you're going to get, right? So, oh, they're cheating, or they're doing this, or they're spending all these things you're grasping for, and you never look internally, it's going to be further from where you need to be. And I mean, the stats, I'm a numbers guy, right? So
yeah,
since he's been at Penn State since 2010, these numbers are insane. They got 86 All-Americans. Okay, out of the 86 All-Americans, 69% of those are national finalists. So if you're an All-American at Penn State, 70% chance probability that you're going to be in the national championship.
Yeah, I saw 86 and then 38 were the number of champs. So
Yeah,
like it's almost
champs. Yeah, but the finalists would be
right, top two. Yeah.
Yeah, but that number is insane. And people are saying, well, the scoring record does hold. I mean, sometimes you just gotta give people their flowers and say, like, I said this 3 years ago. I don't see, this was after Iowa won in 21 in St. Louis. I don't see Penn State losing. I mean, it's going to take, they're 100 parts ahead of people today. I think it's going to, and the reason is, like, why do people say, why are they winning so much? What do kids, if you're recruiting a kid out of high school, what would they say? A top tier kid, what do they always say they want to be? They want to be a 4-time NCAA champ and a World Olympic champ, right? That's like the jargon, correct? If you look at all your choices and Penn State wanted you to go there, and you had a 70% chance to win be in the national finals. They've got, I think, in their club, they've got like 43 national titles, 26 World Olympic medals, and 8 Olympic medals. Why would you go anywhere else?
Yeah, when you look at the RTC, because like what we were joking about, like theoretically, this could be our lineup for America: Gilman, Zane / Nick Lee, Kyle Dake, David Taylor / Burrows, Kyle Snyder, and this one's a little bit of a reach, but Kirkfleet. Okay. That would mean the entire team trains at Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. Yeah. I know one year Lou Rosselli had 5 out of 7 1 year at Ohio State. I remember, and that was when there were 7 weights, guys, so I'm not crazy like that.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When they had 5 out of 7, what also happened that year before that?
I don't know.
They won the national title.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I'm just saying, I'm just talking about I'm saying, like, there has been a dominant year like that. But if Penn State has 4 of the 6 members on the team, like, okay, I'll bet you play the wings. The over-unders. I think the numbers. Well, no, I think the number's 4. If I said 4.5, you take the under. If I said 3.5, you take the over. The over-under's 3.5 Penn State guys on the Olympic team.
Well, I'm going to take the over.
Right. And for people that don't understand at home, that means he thinks there's going to be 4 more. And I think the things that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you feel very confident in Snyder, very confident in Dake, very confident in Taylor, and then you got shots at the other 3 weights, right?
Everybody's kind of written Jaden off, haven't they?
No, I'm just saying, though, Snyder's sitting in Final X, like the worst thing he can do is take second. I'm just saying, when you have guys that the worst thing they can do is take second, just like I said, Kirkfleet's a reach. He has to win the tournament and then beat Paris. 57 and 65 are different.
Just to even be in that conversation is crazy.
Right. No, for sure.
But I think that everyone's like, what's Kill doing? What's Kill doing? Really, he's just recreated some of the things that have worked in the past. When the Hawks were kicking butt, in the 90s, all the 90s. And when Coach Gibbons and Iowa State won in, the late 80s.
Yeah.
It's the same model, guys. It's like you got to track where top tier talent's going to come and they're going to get better, right? When you're evaluating your RTC, and it goes back to kind of last chance qualifier, you got guys that are getting paid a salary and they're getting beat by guys that either are non-starters, right? Or they're still in high school. It'd be hard to imagine that those guys are getting your college guys much better.
Yeah. I think the one fundamental difference is there was definitely an Iowa style, and I don't feel like there's a Penn State style. Like, I don't think Bo Bartlett wrestles like Mitchell Messenbrink, who necessarily wrestles like Aaron Brooks. And they do such a good job of singing from the same hymnal of gratitude and thankfulness and having fun and scoring points. But, like, it's so hard. Look, I joke with you. I'm Japanese Switzerland, right? Like, I can't root for anybody. I root for people to stay healthy and for no bad calls to happen. But there are certain programs in the country, if they want you, they have to slide up to the top of the list, even if they weren't on your list. And you'll be going through this with your son. To go back to other takeaways, I thought Arizona State did a magnificent job of pulling it together late. They had an abominable regular season, and they dang near wrestled as pretty close to perfect in terms of realism of what they could have. I think Parco was a slot or 2 below. and Schultz was a slot or two below. But, Figs, I kind of thought Figs was the best guy all year. He just certainly didn't wrestle like it. But I thought if everybody there wrestled their best, he's just the best wrestler, best skill set. And then Teamer broke through and made the finals. And, so 125, and I'm sure you've talked about it on the stuff you do. There was just names you just had to put numbers next to. It wasn't like saying Aaron Brooks is the number 1 seed. And nothing against Braden Davis. He had a really good season and somebody deserved it. If Drake Ayala had won the Big Tens instead of Braden Davis, he would have been the 1 seed because it was such a stacked weight in that conference. You take a guy like Matt Ramos who beat Spencer Lee and then doesn't place this year. If you had taken a bet on March 1 of a year ago and said Matt Ramos is going to beat Spencer Lee and then not place in 24, the odds would have to have been like 10,000 to 1. When you parlay those two things, it's just bonkers.
I think there was 20 All-Americans that then returning All-Americans during their career that didn't place this year.
A lot of them are the older guys.
It shows the level of parity of the sport. Like maybe in the past, the Gable era, there's probably 4 or 5 schools people went to. Now there's, it's 20, you're 20, 25 deep. You're going to have 1 or 2 guys that can knock off anybody.
For sure. And I think some of that 20 number has to do with like those 6th-year seniors, like a DiAgostino. I think those of us that pick these pools, you kind of suspect if they don't win on the front, they may not wrestle as hard. It's the same thing we talked about at the Olympic trials, right? Like Jax Forrest will probably wrestle harder on the back than a 35-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's just, in the age groups, age is different. But all right, so Mark and GT and I will make our picks next week. But I will let you get on the record and you can get in on the wing bet with us. We just generally doesn't matter. Somebody just agrees to pick up the tab. So give me your picks. We'll do men's freestyle. I think that's where you focus the most. 57. Who you got?
I gotta go. I mean, I gotta roll with my guy Gilman.
Okay. I was shocked if you would. I thought you might pick Spencer Lee. I mean, you are in the state of Iowa.
Well, I'm state Iowa, but I'm a Gilman guy first. The path that Spencer's going to have on the top of the bracket is definitely going to be a lot easier route than on the bottom of the bracket.
So how do you see the seeds going? You think Zane's
even if Spencer gets the 4 or the 5, he'll be on the top. He'll wrestle Suriano probably in the second round after a bye, and then have Zane in the semis.
So Zane's the 1, or Gilman and Dayton the 2, 3? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Gilman will get the 2, and Dayton will get the 3, and then Vito will be over on the semi because he's already in the semi. So
right. I was going to get to that. GT says Spencer will be seated above Fix, that he's done more at 57 kilos, and that those will count for more. So he thinks that Spencer's going to be on the 3 on the bottom with Gilman and Vito.
Well, I mean, what is he using the U.S. Open? Because the last time, I mean, it depends if they use the NCAA format of, it forfeited out of the Open last year. So technically he hasn't lost to Suriano. Technically he hasn't lost to whoever on the back of the side either. Right?
But he beat him this year. Or beat everybody this year. Whoever he wrestled, he won the tournament.
Well, his beat is Megaludis, who's not in the bracket, really. I mean, the only one in the bracket and common opponent he had would be Luke Lillidahl.
Yeah, and the Farrell, he didn't catch any of those guys either, right?
Well, look at he doesn't. He looks strong. Spencer does really strong. He looks confident. That's gonna be a big difference of him on the bottom or the top, because that's gonna be 3 tough matches in a row.
Right. No, it's a weird thing where you would want the 4 instead of the 3, right?
Oh yeah, or he'll take the 5.
No, right. Okay, but I'm saying you don't want the highest seed possible, just in general.
But Vito on the bottom like that throws a wrench into everything, just because he's already sitting. You know what I mean?
So I tend to lean towards Vito in this scenario, and this is my logic. And tell me if you disagree, and it's fine. They're all gonna weigh in the. I'm already wrong. They're gonna weigh in the morning. He doesn't have to wrestle that semi till that night. Okay, so they wrestle all day, and he's gonna hydrate and feel good. So I feel like he's gonna probably win. I think he'll be favored to win that match no matter who he wrestles, because just based on how he feels. And then it's going to be a hard weight cut for him that night, but it's going to be a hard weight cut for pretty much anybody else unless it's Zane Richards or Spencer. So
and then they wrestle the They wrestle 2 of the 3 matches the next morning. It's not in the afternoon with everybody else.
No, I saw that. Well, trust me, I've been paying attention because I'm like, what's interesting is like they announced this unprecedented coverage on Peacock, and I'm like, which match do I got? Like, I don't even know which one. I'm excited though. Like, we're gonna get to do a lot of stuff. It's gonna be awesome. Okay, so you got Gilman. Okay,
well, the only thing about Vito that I question is the weight cut, number one. And second is that, and you didn't see this at the NCAAs, definitely, but there's definitely been that rumor out there that he has been dealing with an injury all year. But yeah. It wasn't. You didn't see much of that at the NCAA tournament, so we'll see. I mean, we haven't seen Gilman wrestle. I haven't seen Gilman wrestle since Final X last year. There's no secret that it's I mean, it's, you see him next to the 65 kilo guys. He looks bigger than most of those guys, so it's a massive weight cut for him.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, and a Cinderella story would be if Dayton won. You know, like, well, I just think, hey, you lost in the finals. Everybody, I'm just saying, like, a feel good story. I'm not saying like if.
No, I'm not. I was just giving you a hard time. Like, I think, I mean, you got 3 world medalists in there. 2 are world champs. Yeah. Plus, you have Spencer Lee.
Well, the other thing is you're going to be able to say that about almost every weight because all these dudes are jammed up together. But yeah, okay, 65. Who are you picking?
Is James Green going to be this weight or not? Or is he up?
He's in it.
Is he 65 or 74?
He told me he's going 65.
He looked thin last weekend. And Zane's sitting in the finals?
Semis. Because he won it at 70, a non-Olympic weight.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna go Alirez.
So here's what's interesting. This is the same example where like Nick Lee will be at the top, and Yanni, if he can make it out, will wrestle Zane. So like it's sort of the same thing at 57, where being the 4 or 5 seed doesn't hurt you. Alirez is a really good pick. As you said before, Bo Bartlett's actually beaten Nick Lee. They changed the result. I think Jesse Mendez, you know, he's really good at freestyle. I mean, he's an age group guy. You know, maybe it's a few years too early for him. Maybe in 28, I would say without a doubt, in 28 he'll be better at wrestling. You know, but
I don't see Zane's definitely going to be a big cut for Zane as well. So he's going to sit all the way till the night as well. Just how well he manages it. I don't know. You talk about fire and stuff. I'm not saying he lost it, you know, but I don't see near the fire in Yanni that I once saw.
I think Yanni's our best chance to qualify the weight. He seems to do the best against the international field. So, you know, and as you said at the beginning of this, you know, we have to qualify that weight. All right, 74, we got to keep it moving. Dake sits in Final X. Does Burroughs make it, or does one of the young guns knock him off?
I'm going with Nolf.
Nolf. Okay. All right. And then Dake 2 straight over Nolf?
I don't know.
I can't put I don't know when we put the picks down. You
gotta, I'll take Dake, but I think it's going to go to 3.
Okay. So you think Nolf's like really in it?
Well, I mean, he looked really great overseas and, you know, beat up on some guys that have given some guys trouble. So, and that what a deep weight that is. You got multiple age group world champions in there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like O'Toole, Messenbrink, Carr, Shapiro.
Like, do you see JB at 63 or at 74 kilos like he wrestled 79, or we see JB, you know, a shell himself at 74 kilos? I thought he should have went up, David. Like
I did too.
But his disdain for Dake must be that large that, you know, trying to do that. But I just think he wrestles better. And really, if you beat David, right, and you look at the world that you got Donnie pretty much in the rest of the world to beat, and then that's it. I mean, that's not it. But the depth of the weight, even if you make it at 74 kilos, is so deep in the world.
No, I thought he'd go up. I thought he should go up. So
Brooks or David?
Well, so here's an interesting thing just for people at home that don't understand this. Brooks beat Zahid to get the right to go to Final X. Zahid moves up to 92, wins our trials and qualifies our medals, at Worlds. So he now qualifies for the semifinal. So he actually has an easier path to the finals than Brooks.
Yep.
So it's an interesting thing for people to understand that. I have a weird feeling. Listen, I'm sure I'm wrong. I think Brooks is going to win the weight. I think Brooks is going to make the team.
Oh, I'm not. I'm going with David.
Yeah, I think that's the smart money, right? And the other thing that it was pointed out to me at the Arizona State Social was that Zahid was up either 8-0 or 8-2 on Brooks. And, which is true. You and I were at that match in Vegas. Got tired. But you can argue if you can fix getting tired, it's a lot easier to fix getting tired than it is to be able to score 8 points on a guy right away. Yeah. So, all right. So 97, Snyder is sitting. I feel like the only person that can challenge him is Jaden.
100%.
And I think I
think for some reason that's going to go 3 matches.
Yeah. I recruited Jaden's brother growing up. Like, Jaden's a Missouri guy, like state of Missouri guy. So, I do have a bias there, but and Jaden's also just, so is Snyder. I just don't know him as well, but Jaden's always been a super nice human being to me.
He's got a lot going on in his life. I think he just had twins, maybe got married. Yeah. So it's like, it goes back to that priority thing. But right. I go 3 matches, but I'm going to take Snyder.
Okay.
And then
Paris.
Oh.
Who comes out of the mini tournament? How about we start with that?
Kirkfleet or Gwiz, probably.
Not Hendrickson.
No.
Okay.
He just didn't look. He looks like he's been ailing with an injury. Like, even at the NCAAs, he got. I don't. He just looked like he wasn't as dynamic on his feet, and he looked like he got really tired. That's just me speculating, but
yeah. Okay.
How's he going to take Kirkfleet down?
I don't know. I'm just saying he almost beat Paris in that special wrestle off. Like, he had him crying in that gut wrench. Yeah. Listen, all your points are valid. I'm just we're having a
good conversation.
Yeah.
I think first I want to go with Gwiz, but I just think it's so hard to be more and more. You're seeing guys that coach and also compete. It's a hard dynamic because it just doesn't add up anymore. Just the selfishness or you give your time away.
Yeah, you can't be served too many masters. And if you want to be a great coach, you have to be absolutely unselfish. And if you want to be a great athlete, you have to be selfish at times.
100%.
And it's understandable that you're being selfish. Like, I had a little brother, and if he lost, I was still going to win. Where if you're being a good brother, you stop what you're doing and you go console him. So, it's a different conversation.
You're right about that 100%.
Kirkfleet or Paris?
That's
who you have in the finals, right? You're saying Kirkfleet because you said Kirkfleet.
I'm going to go Kirkfleet.
So you have Kirkfleet making the team, Snyder making the team, Taylor making the team. You have
Gilman.
You have
Dake and Gilman.
Dake and Gilman. You have it at 5.
I know. It's a lot.
5 in Colorado.
Well, they'll probably move the Olympic Training Center to State College.
Yeah.
I know that was a stated goal that they wanted to accomplish, bringing some of these guys in. But even some of those weights, they're too deep. You got Dake pushing Nolf. You got Brooks pushing Taylor. It's all over.
Yes. It would be unprecedented. Like, and shout out to Lou Rosselli and what they did at Ohio State. 5 out of 7 is amazing. 6 out of 6 is insane if it happens.
But it goes back to this, David, is what's a little bit scary, I guess, for USA Wrestling is there's majority of these senior level athletes have been funded at the local level through these RTCs or clubs, right? And as the paradigm shift continues to move towards NIL, sorry.
Yep.
That same amount of money people are giving, majority of the time they're giving it because they want the college team to be successful. So
yes,
how money is managed at these club levels versus senior level athletes versus giving money for NIL, it's going to be interesting dynamic to see what the impact is to the senior level wrestling.
Yeah, we talked about this, and this is, I say this probably once a month. One of the great things about being on this platform versus when we were on track was when I was on track and Flow didn't like each other. And so, I was literally told one year, don't cover Fargo because it's on Flow, which was just an absolutely insane suggestion. But now, if somebody at these other organizations, I work next to these guys when I did the interviews on the ground. One year, there was 3 things, and Christian Piles ran one way, and Willie ran another way, and I ran a third way, and then we all just traded interviews so we could all get them on our platforms, right? And it's, USA Wrestling's, I think, very well respected by everybody in wrestling. We talked about this early on, that there's a finite number of dollars in the world, and that most people, if they gave $100,000 to say Hawkeye Wrestling Club or Iowa Wrestling, and they said, what do you want from that? Do you want a guy on the Olympic team, or do you want Iowa to win NCAA nationals? I feel like 99 out of 100 people would say Iowa to win nationals. Okay, you live there. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's the perception from St. Louis, Missouri. And so then now that you can give the money straight to the athletes that can do that for you, okay, you're right. Like, they got to fundraise differently to get these guys on the senior level, because the senior level athletes do help those college guys get better in terms of training partners. Like, I'll tell you this, and then we'll get out of here, almost an hour. So John Messenbrink is Mitchell Messenbrink's father, and John wrestled for my dad at Merrimack. Okay. And he was on the team at Merrimack when I was in high school. So we worked out together all the time, and I love John. John has done an amazing job, because he was fourth at state as a senior he was like 20-13. And he had lost to like the top 3 guys were 12 of those 13 losses. But he's a guy that grinds and grinds. Like, his nickname was Beast. For a guy who's 20-13, that tells you something, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it just tells you about his mentality. And he told me about an example. He's like, I don't know if you saw it, David, but in the whatever duel, it might have been the Wisconsin duel or something. He goes, he got rode in legs, and he goes, so they just took him in the room on Monday and said, you're going to work with Zane Rutherford today on getting out of legs. And like, we're all smart enough as coaches, like, hey, Adam, TJ, you guys had a hard time getting out of legs. Let's work on getting out of legs, right? Like, most of us are smart enough to do step A, right? Step B, let's maybe put you with the most brutal leg rider of the last 20 years, and he's going to work with you and not just beat the crud out of you, but
teach you
like, hey, when you do this, you're making it worse for yourself, because I'm just going to do this. But when you do this, I have to adjust. And walking through those things, and probably even letting him write it down. Like, he goes, he's jumping levels so fast, talking about his son. He goes, because of that, because of scenarios like that. And I thought it was a brilliant observation. And first of all, I really appreciated him telling me, because, like, you think those things are happening, but it's really cool to share that story on the air. Like, a lot of my friends would love to hear that story, and they just don't know the right people.
Well, a lot of times kids always question, like, they'll sit there and go through the exercise you're trying to put them through, and in the back of their mind, they're just nodding and appeasing you, but they don't believe half the stuff you're telling them. But when you're trying to get to so you think about the partners that they have in there, right? When you're trying to get to a place where in your career, and you're surrounded with these guys that have already been there, it's easy just to get in the fold. It's really believable when the guy's telling you has already done what you're trying to get.
For sure. Like, yes, like,
it's not like a pipe dream at that point. It's like you're surrounded by guys that have already done and reached levels that you're aspiring to do. So you just falling into the fold of the culture. Why wouldn't you do everything the other guys are doing? And that's kind of how, when you have a culture that breeds itself, that's what we have.
Well, and that's why the John Smiths, Cale Sandersons, Tom Brands of the world are always going to be good at recruiting, because they won the ultimate chip, right? And people want to go win the ultimate chip. And so, like, if a guy says, well, if you do what I tell you to, you can win that chip, they're going to have a huge leg up in recruiting over an Adam Fellers or a David Mirikitani, because we didn't win that chip and we didn't come close to it. So, all right, don't hang up. I'm going to sign off, but I have to talk to you about something else. I want to thank Adam for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mark and GT will be back. We're going to record early next week, folks, so we can get the picks out and let Gary put the podcast up before the Olympic trials, so we can see probably how right Adam was and how wrong Mark and I are. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all next week.